We all want to make a positive impact on the world, but what do we have to experience to get there? This is Stripped Bare FM, where our shared stories of strategy, raw talk, and real people uplift and inspire you. Now, welcome the host of Stripped Bare FM, Cathy Nakos.
Hello, everyone. Imagine living your Cinderella story and being married at 18. By the age of 21, you're on life's high with 3 kids and your whole life to look forward to when you find out your husband has multiple sclerosis and suddenly wheelchair bound. Today on Strip Bare FM, I have the pleasure of talking to Cathy Nakos. She is an entertainment manager, music, event, and film producer, was an executive national consultant and trainer for the American Heart Association, as well as the American Diabetes Association based in Nashville, Tennessee. Let's take a moment right here to inform my listeners that they can benefit from learning different strategies on scaling both their life and their career by booking a quick consultation with me directly via my site, CathyNakos.com. Now back to our guest. Welcome, Cathy. Are you ready for some raw talk?
I am ready, Catherine.
Amazing. Great. So, Cathy, now as a grandmother of 5 and a successful entertainment manager, film producer, and philanthropist, did you ever think your life would be so abundant?
Absolutely not. It's a miracle and a blessing is all I can tell you. I never would have dreamed I would have met the people I have or been in the situation that I'm in. Although I should say this, I did dream of it.
I think that's what helps us get through it, right? The dreaming and the hoping.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So those were really rough times at a really, really young age when you just got married. You're looking forward to starting your life. You did have 3 kids, and that's not what obviously life dealt you. How did it feel going through that? Like, what did you go through exactly when you found out your husband was so sick?
Interestingly enough, when we went to Mayo Clinic to find out, it was more of a relief because I honestly thought he had a brain tumor from things that I looked up about his symptoms. So when they said MS, I went and looked up what multiple sclerosis was in the library and immediately wrote to the National MS Organization and said, I want to volunteer. I want to help raise money. I want to find a cure. And at a young age, because actually when I found out he had MS, I was only 19. And at that age, you still are invincible and think that, you can really make a difference. And that was my goal. My goal was to make a difference.
So a year into your marriage, you find out your husband has multiple sclerosis and you didn't know the severity of it because 2 years later he was in a wheelchair.
Correct.
So you kept having babies knowing that your husband was ill. That means you were very hopeful.
Actually, I went through a lot of consulting. I talked with priests, ministers, psychologists, and, wondered if this was the best thing to do and to have a child again. And they all convinced me, well, they didn't have to convince me. They all suggested that it was a good idea not to raise one child alone. And since we were fortunate enough to have the means to be able to provide for the children, they said, it would be a good idea. And also it would bring him happiness if things went downhill for him. So, yes, we decided to have another child. And surprisingly, I got 2 for the price of 1. And that was kind of scary because here I was, trying to figure out whether to have 1 more. And now I've got twins.
2. Oh,
So
wow.
I have, 3 children under the age of 2 and a husband in a wheelchair. But, you persevere. I looked at it as it's a blessing and something good is going to come out of it. And it has been a tremendous blessing.
That's a lot. Did you have any help?
I did. I was very fortunate and blessed that I had both sets of grandparents and my sister who was younger than me, so she helped with babysitting occasionally. And, I had a nurse for 6 weeks, thank goodness. But, you do what you have to do. A lot of great friends.
So, what were the next few years like being a mom of three, a husband who is now wheelchair bound? What was it like in your 20s now getting through it? How did you get through it and not break down, knowing that, your husband's just really getting a lot worse?
Well, one thing that happened to me when I was very young, we moved around an awful lot. And as a result, by the time I got to middle school, I was very depressed. It was like every time I meet new friends, we're moving. And so one night I was listening to the radio as I was, going to sleep, and a song came on called Smile and the World Smiles With You. And it goes on to say, cry and you cry alone. And I thought about that, and it was like a major aha in my life. So the next morning, when I went to the school bus, I walked up to the bus and I smiled at somebody, and I noticed that they smiled back. And so I smiled at somebody else, and I noticed that they smiled back. And this started the major change in my life all the way around, because I was also in a play, and I had a Latin teacher who was extremely depressed, and she had gone to the convent and ended up not being able to make it, and so she was taking it out on her students basically, and never smiled. I mean, just mean. And she happened to volunteer to put makeup on the people that were in the play, and she was doing my makeup, and I was smiling out at her, and she started laughing. And I said, "What's so funny?" And she goes, "Do you ever take that smile off your face?" And I said, "Not if I can help it." And after that, every time she walked by my desk and I was on the front left corner of the room, she would giggle. And just seeing how that changed her life made me change my perspective on life.
That's amazing.
And I think that was a very important part of dealing with what I was dealing with, because, I could take a look at it and go, gee, woe is me. But instead, I wanted to look at it and go, I'm going to find a cure, and things, may or may not go right, but I'm going to discipline my children so that they know that I'm the one that's, who they go to in case something does happen, and be prepared for everything I could be prepared, while being, very optimistic that things might get better. And I took on my role as a volunteer with the MS Society seriously. And at that time, there was only an executive director and a part-time secretary. So I took on the role of doing public relations and development for them, fundraising, and created one of the biggest fundraising events in the history of Alabama at that time by roasting the late Coach Paul Bear Bryant. And while I was in his office, talking to him, he asked me why I chose him. And I said, because you're the winningest coach in football, college football. And he said, and the best. I said, the best. He says, no, I'm not the best. I just know how to surround myself with great people. He pretty much told me his plan of how he recruited. And he said, the only obstacle in life is taking your eye off the goal. And that was another, turnaround for me. And I thought, well, my goal is to find a cure. And even if it doesn't cure my husband, maybe it'll cure somebody else. And so I continued doing those roasts. And in fact, it's interesting because they're still going on as a fundraiser for the MS organization. And through that, I met some incredible people, sports figures, celebrities, and it kept my interest going, because as a kid, I wanted to be an actress and a singer. And so while I wasn't doing my own entertaining at that time, I was meeting those folks that were, and experiencing some of the things that they were going through. And then in addition to that, I wound up hiring a band for one of them, and I wound up singing with the band when the lead singer got pregnant, and by the time she was 7 months, couldn't travel anymore. So I fulfilled another dream in that aspect, and just took quality time, too, with my kids, and expressing to them, that every day could be a disappointment, but using analogies like going skiing, for example, because some friends of ours were big skiers, and my son had gone skiing with them, my oldest son. And I said, if you planned your whole year around going on a ski trip and you got there and there was no snow, it would be disappointing. But if you were sitting at home and suddenly your friend called and said, hey, we're going skiing because there's 2 feet of snow, it would be a pleasant surprise. And we have to look at Dad that way. We have to look at it is that if we wait every day for him to get well, every day is going to be a disappointment. But if we look at it like, oh, if he he's this way at this moment, but if he gets well, it'll be a great surprise to us. And, that's basically when he did pass away, I didn't say Daddy died. I said we wanted him to walk, and now he's walking with God.
Oh, wow. How old were you when he passed?
28.
28. Okay. So you went through 10 years with him being ill and watching him. And how were the kids after that when he passed? And how did you deal with all of that? It sounds like you had a good way of looking at things and living and teaching your kids some great lessons throughout it all.
That was my goal. I besides, wanting to find a cure, my other number one goal was to raise children who were contributors to the world, not takers from the world. And so I wanted to be one of the best parents ever. I even took a course on parenting.
You know what? A lot of people, that should be a requirement in high school or college or I don't know where, but it definitely should be something that, should be taught.
It's definitely one of the most important things you do in life is raise children, and so, that was my goal. And I taught them, like they always had extra work to do, because I would share with them, when you go to school, you learn exactly what everybody else is learning. If you want to be better, you have to do extra work.
Definitely.
So a lot of things that, like when I was busy doing an event, or even when I started working, they knew they had extra things that they had to do. Mm-hmm. And then that became our conversation at the dinner table. So, there wasn't always a lot of time, but there was always quality time. And that's extremely important. I know a lot of parents who stay home with their kids all day long, every day, but they don't give them quality time.
Right.
And we say anybody can be a mother and a father, but they can't always be a parent.
True, very true. It sounds like throughout this adversity, you launched your philanthropic career. You launched also your entertainment career. Am I correct in saying that?
You're right. You're absolutely right. Because after my husband passed away, I was also doing volunteer work for the American Heart Association, because I roasted Bart Starr, and his advertising exec happened to be a volunteer with the Heart Association. And so when I asked him to do PR for the roast, he said, I will if you'll come do volunteer work for me at the Heart Association. And the exec said to me one day, he says, so what are you going to do now? And I said, well, obviously I'm looking for a career. And he said, well, why don't you come work for us? And I said, well, I actually had 2 job offers at the same time, because the rehab center where my husband was when he passed actually told me to name my fee and come and talk with patients about the importance of rehab. And I just felt like that was too close right there to do. And so from the time I was a little kid, I used to stand on corners collecting money for Red Cross. So the Heart Association seemed like a good thing to do. And he asked me if I'd ever done any planning. And I said, well, I plan to have 2 kids with 1 birthday party. I said, I got 3 kids with 1 birthday party because my twins are August the 17th and my oldest is August the 19th. And he says, well, have you ever managed anything before? And I said, well, besides the events that I managed, I've managed to raise honor students. And he said, you're hired. So that's how I got my first job. And I was like, okay, we just took an adverse situation and turned it into a career. And it did turn into a 20-year career for me. And in doing that career, I was fortunate enough to work with people like Tony Bennett, John Davidson, Bobby Vinton, Kenny Rogers, just numerous celebrities that I knew when my kids went to college, I would wind up moving to Nashville.
Amazing. That is so amazing. You did truly take lemons and make lemon pie with your situation.
Well, I used lemon pie because lemon pie seems to be sweeter. And my life has certainly been sweet and been very, very, very blessed.
So you started meeting all these celebrities and you had raised your kids. Now they're what? They would be 8 or 9, 10 years old at that time at 28?
They were 10 and 12 when he passed.
Okay.
When I went to work with the Heart Association, the first thing I told them was that, I wanted to become an exec for a state. And so 18 months later, they moved me to Nevada as the first executive director for the state of Nevada for the Heart Association. So it was a good thing because it moved us away from the past.
Mm.
And that was a real good experience. It also taught my children, that when they moved, life wasn't so scary. In other words, you can meet new people, you can learn new things. And before we got there, I had taught them that if they look it up in the encyclopedia and find stories about Nevada, and they could look at things that they wanted to do. And of course, number one was to ski at Tahoe. And so the lake activities were there. They wanted to go to Yosemite, which was a 4-hour drive. And, when we got there, it wasn't such a drudgery, like, oh gosh, we moved away from everybody. And they were in sports, so they immediately found, friends in their sports activities.
They were at the right age, though, like starting high school to do that. So it was a good move at that point.
By the time we moved, they were 12 and 14. Okay. So yes, it was a good age.
Were you happy? Were you happy once you moved and things got settled and you started your career, and now you're with the American Heart Association, you're dealing with different celebrities, creating events, I assume, for them?
Happiness is a state of mind. And what is really happy? Happy is having peace within yourself and loving yourself and having the love and support of your family. And I had all of those. I can't say that there weren't times that you get down because we're human. And yes, so there were times, but overall, yes, generally joyful.
Amazing.
In fact, I had one staff member, we did one thing called reverse reviews. We did performance reviews of our staff every quarter, but once a year they got to review us. And I actually had one staff person give me a glowing review, except she said, I think you're a fake. And I said, why would you say that? I've never heard that before. And she goes, nobody can walk into this office every day with a smile on their face unless they're faking it. And I said, well, let me tell you what I've been through. I said, every day is a pleasure to me. And when you see somebody pass at a very young age, I think life becomes more meaningful and you look at the real values in life. And they're not the material things. They're not what you have in your home. They're not the things that you do. It's the love you have and the memories you have. And that to me is, by far the most important. And I had that. I had 3 great sons. And we did a lot of things together as a family. And to me, that was the most important. I mean, Catherine, I have so many awards, I don't even know where they are. My rewards are my children. They're what's hanging on my wall.
Amazing. Did she get it after that?
Yeah, she
Good.
did. She
But you know what it is? It's all about perspective, right? Her perspective was one different of yours. And our different lives will give us our own perspectives. And if we want to smile every day, it's because there's a reason for it. We find gratitude and, and something of value in our everyday because we know that things could be worse.
Yes, and it goes back to watching that one teacher start to smile and laugh.
Yeah. See, you changed one person's perspective early on in life, with just smiling back. And now this time someone, actually questioned your character because
Exactly.
you were smiling all the time, which was the second time, I guess, because even the first time she was questioning you, right? And
Exactly.
yeah, look at that. What else happened in your life? I know you had told me before this interview that there was two pivotal moments in your life, and you said there was a second one that you wanted to speak about that changed your life in a different way again.
Actually, I covered both of those. The first one was the story about Miss Joseph, the teacher, and the second one was when I wrote to the MS organization. And I suddenly, at 19 years old, was put on the board for MS. And I wasn't even old enough to vote. They didn't know that because here I was with children and a husband that was older than I was. And they just assumed that I was old enough. And it wasn't until my 25th birthday that they suddenly said, "You're 25. Wait a minute. You've been on the board for 6 years. You aren't old enough to vote. We shouldn't have put you on the board." And I'm like, I didn't know.
I'm just going along. It's not my fault.
You nominated me. I figured it was okay. They were, because being on the board, like I said, when I did the Bear Bryant roast, that changed my whole life because he taught me, he was one of my biggest mentors because he taught me that I could do things I never dreamed I could do, like calling the presidents of ABC, calling Frank Gifford to be a master of ceremonies, talking to all these national sports figures that everybody knew who they were, and George Lindsay, who was Goober on the Andy Griffith Show. And they all came in. And I also learned a lot, about teamwork with the group that I had volunteering with me. And you share the glory. And it was just an awesome experience. And also my dad was a coach. And I was very lucky that I was the oldest and got to go to practice with him and saw him as a coach and motivator instead of just dad at home. And my siblings have asked me, how is it that you've seen him as positive? And it took me many years to be able to answer that question. And suddenly it dawned on me, I was the one who got the experience of watching him coach.
Mm.
And it was a totally different man out there. And I learned from him to, no matter how far down you got or, when you're losing, like especially in wrestling, because it's an individual sport, you go out there and get pinned one week and the next week, you can either go out there and get pinned again or you can come back and win. And, watching him teach those boys and develop those young men taught me so much. And life is a sport. It really is. It's a game, you have to play the game. And again, winners look at things totally different than losers do.
Absolutely. Where do you see yourself now? When you look back at everything that happened to you, would you have made any different decisions, or do you find that it just went along the way it is and you are at a place of gratitude today?
I'm at a place of gratitude. I'm so, so blessed. And right now, my biggest goal is to write my book. I've already started to share some of these things that I hope will help other people.
They definitely will. They definitely will because that's a huge thing to go through at such a young age. And you took the reins. You went beyond taking the reins. You took over the MS Society, and you at 19 with 3 kids. At 20 by the age of 21, but with 3 kids. That's a lot. That's a lot.
I always say it's a God thing because, who's smart enough to do those things without somebody helping you or guiding you?
Did anybody discourage you at any point, because you have the three kids, back then maybe they were
Oh,
like,
yeah,
no career for you, stay home. I don't know.
absolutely. You being Greek like I am, that happened.
That's why I asked the question. What do you think?
If anybody saw my big fat Greek wedding, they will know that the girls were supposed to stay home, get married. In fact, one day I was on the front page of the newspaper and it said Mrs. Cathy Nakos instead of Mrs. Nolan Nakos. And my father had a fit. And he said, I would never be married to you. And I said, well, guess what? I would never be married to you.
He didn't give you the whole spiel of Cathy. There's drugs. There's drugs downtown. You don't go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it truly was just like that. And, you just didn't, a woman wasn't supposed to do those things. You were supposed to stay home and raise your children, and especially with a sick husband. And, my in-laws were from Greece and they just couldn't understand why I would take him to a football game. But my husband had played football at Auburn and we didn't miss a game unless he was in the hospital. And the university was exceptionally good to us. We had a press box parking pass and I was able to wheel him right in, So, like I said, I have truly been blessed. Truly been blessed.
A lot of strength. I see a lot of strength throughout all of that. You didn't allow people to set boundaries for you. You set the boundaries for yourself.
Well, I was going to do it my way. That was my other favorite song.
Definitely.
I'd have to,
right? Cathy, I love to watch people like you who can take their story, their tragic story, and switch it to a positive one that uplifts not only them, but all those who surround them. So I know my listeners would love to know more about you and your strategies on how you made it through adversity to success. So let's take a quick peek and fast track through some questions. Are you ready?
Sure.
What is your definition of success?
Rising above perception.
I love that.
And the other is what Coach Brian taught me. The only obstacle is taking your eye off the goal.
Yeah, when you said that before, I'm like, I really love that too. Those are great analogies. I love that. Great for my listeners. I think
another one is taking yourself lightly. So often people take themselves so seriously, defeat themselves before ever.
Definitely.
Having a chance. If you can't laugh at yourself, you got problems.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely have to be able to laugh at yourself. Definitely. Because, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to do something odd or dumb or, whatever you want to call it. And you got to be able to laugh at it.
Someone once told me that, I laughed when they were down. And I said, I wasn't laughing at you. I was trying to make you laugh so you would feel better. And they said, well, how would you feel if you fell down? And I laughed. And I said, well, that's the difference between you and me, because if I fell down, I'd be the first to laugh. And I would. I mean, I've fallen down and, I just sit there and laugh. And then I get it.
There's some people that can't take it, eh? They find it so funny when people fall. I don't know. Like, it's this thing, they just, no matter how bad they feel, they'll just start laughing. I don't know.
We learn to survive through laughter.
Yeah. Laughter is key to happiness. And I don't think there should be a day where you don't laugh. Even on the worst days, there's got to be something to laugh about. What is the one thing you're most excited about today?
Getting my book out there.
Yes. I'm looking forward to it. Share with us your one personal habit that makes you successful and keeps you inspired every day.
The one thing I've always done is set goals, but not just set goals. I set them with 3 scenarios. What's the worst possible outcome? what's the realistic outcome and what's the potential. And I find that by doing that, you wind up somewhere between realistic and potential. If you just set realistic goals, you tend to not strive harder.
Right, you're not pushing the envelope.
And, that was the one thing that I always coached, when I was an executive as well, is that you have to look at what the worst is so you know that that is the worst. But if you don't put that potential in there, you don't know what you can possibly do.
Yeah, I agree.
The other is to take action. No action will get you nowhere.
Right, we could be dreamers, but never take action on it, right?
Exactly.
Strategic action.
Strategic action.
What book would you recommend to our SB listeners and why?
Gosh, there's so many of them. I read a lot of Dan Millman simply because he was a gymnast who was in an accident. They told him he would never walk again. And he ended up winning the bronze medal in the Olympics and as a gymnast. And so to me, that's extremely inspiring. Another one is The Man Who Tapped into the Universe, and it's about Sir Walter Russell, who was a bellboy. And as a bellboy, as he met people that were coming into the hotel, he would welcome them and talk to them for just a few minutes. And by talking to them for just a few minutes, he would find out what their desires were or what their likes were. And he would make sure that he did something extra special for them. And as a result, they would tip him big bucks,
Yeah.
He wound up becoming a millionaire. And there's actually a foundation in Virginia where, it's his building, Sir Walter Russell. So it's a great book, and it's a very simple read.
He became a millionaire not by doing what he was doing, but because of his talent.
Becoming, a businessman.
Oh, okay.
But, through his efforts, people saw what he did. He met the right people that when he got older, he found the right position.
Amazing. Oh, I love that story. I'm going to pick up that book.
Those kinds of books are my must, yes.
So now for our soul shaker question. If you woke up tomorrow and you were stripped bare of everything in your business and only had shelter, food, and family, what would be the first things you would do in the next 30 days with only $500 in the bank?
Hire a coach. First I'd look at what, I had to take care of, that was immediate. And then I would look at what I could do until, even if I didn't like it, to make a little money until I could build up enough to do what I wanted to do.
Amazing, Cathy.
And that happens every day with, people who want to be actors and they wait tables. They don't really want to wait tables, but they do it to, get towards their dream.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of perseverance there. Lots of perseverance.
Absolutely.
And they keep their eye on the goal, right?
Absolutely.
Right. On a last and final note, what's one takeaway message that my listeners need to hear today?
Stay true to yourself.
Yep.
Stay true to yourself and don't take yourself seriously. And then I also have what I call the 3 Ps: persistence, perseverance, and positive attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Attitude can change your world.
It truly can. Because your perspective will be different than the world.
Totally.
Yeah. Cathy, what's the best way to connect with you for my listeners that are listening?
Well, I'm on Facebook as Cathy Nakos, Twitter and Instagram at CatNak216, which is CATNAK 216. And my email is cnakos67@gmail.com.
Cathy, thank you so much for sharing all of your adversities with us and your successes. I wish you much, much success from this day forward, even more than you have already. Lots of abundance for you. Thank you for sharing your stripped bare story with us today.
Thank you, Catherine, for having me, and thank you to your audience for listening.
If you're loving this podcast, I would love to see you rate and review. after this episode.
That's all for this episode of Stripped Bare FM. Start living your best life. Head to KonTos.com for more information and resources, as well as ways to connect with Catherine directly. That's available exclusively on KonTos.com.